Hello, and welcome to Localities Making Bank podcast with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries take you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph as they share the very stories that have shaped them.
Gamal, Codner, welcome to the Locality Bank podcast, Making Bank.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So interesting. I was telling Gamal, he's the first guest that we've had on that I didn't know previously. So it's great to hear your story, and I'm really looking forward to talking with you. Why don't we start with where you grew up and your background, your family history, and tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So as most people down here, I'm from the Caribbean, have some connection there. I was born in Jamaica. My parents moved us over here when I was about 5, and we lived in Fort Lauderdale, and I attended school here and all the way up until college. I started college at 16 down here at Broward College, and I moved away to Florida State and just came back not too long ago.
So that's a great story. Broward College is like right around the corner from here, and Gregory Hale is the president of Broward College, who's just a great community leader. And I think, and we actually did a program with them on banking. We're trying to, with the students there, that was really, we found really rewarding for us and for the students. Why don't you talk a little bit about how that at age 16, that's an unusual age to go to college. So you must have been a pretty smart kid.
I know. Well, it's not like I started Harvard at 16, but
still.
But yeah, so early on, I was very fortunate to have parents who came over and they valued the opportunity that we had. A lot of people take opportunities for granted. And education was always a way for us to level the playing field, right? It's like access to information. And so I am still a student of information today. It's just different. Instead of just traditional education, now I'm more so getting information from individuals or just things through masterminds and trainings. But I've always been a student of information. And I just excelled at it. And so I was fortunate enough to do well enough in school that I could have started school for free at 16. And nothing beats free education, right? And so I took advantage of it at the time. There was a program that started in Broward County for people who could take on the challenge of starting college at 16. So it was a good fit.
That's cool. And what kind of things did you study initially? What was of most interest to you?
The things that I was interested in, I'm still interested in now. And it's unusual that happens. So I started off with psychology, but I realized I didn't want to go clinical. But fast forward today, I'm a real huge nerd of behavioral psychology and kind of what makes people do the things they do. That's translated into as an entrepreneur, really focusing in on marketing, campaigns that connect with people and move the needle. So whatever I've been doing from 16 to now is still kind of the same thing. So I started with psychology and realized that I didn't like the clinical side of it and the science side of it, but I really like the business side of psychology and how you can use psychology to grow and improve the world. So I transitioned into business at Florida State.
Oh, that's awesome. And then when you left Florida State, did you start, did you go to work for somebody, or what was your path after graduation from school?
I was one of those weird ones where I always was entrepreneurial. So selling candy in middle school to be able to afford the shoes I wanted and the CDs and video games. And then in college also, I started a company. And I went to college at Florida State at 03. And at that time, before Facebook and Instagram, I recognized Florida State was a huge party school, and there were so many options that it was overwhelming. And there was often regret the next day or the Monday where you're man, I went to the wrong thing. I wonder what happened at this other thing. So we just got digital cameras at the time and just pretty much went everywhere and took photos and uploaded them on this website. And we blew up. We had hundreds of thousands of views.
So you could go
monthly.
to the Potts and see who was at Potts or at
Correct.
Clyde's and Costello's.
Correct. All the events.
I know all the bars.
I know. I was about to say.
I have 4 kids that went there. So.
There you go. So yeah, all of those places plus a couple of others. Yeah. And we put that online. And before you know it, we're kind of doing social media before social media was a thing. And we got contracts from, large kind of local representatives because they wanted access to that demographic. And we kind of controlled the Tallahassee area. And we expanded internationally as people came and went on to school, different places. They came back. So that caught the eyes of the recruiters at Gatorade. and they had a management training program, and they thought I'd be a good fit for. And so I took a job with Gatorade coming out of college.
Wow. And so that was your start, and what were you doing at Gatorade?
Another important lesson: everything in life happens for you, not to you. It's hard to understand that in the moment, especially when things aren't going well. But I have a bad story that ended up really being well. So I was supposed to go there to end up in marketing, right? And the caveat to that is, hey, let's go start you at the facility, the manufacturing plant, so you could understand what's going on, so you could make better marketing ideas. And then I got there, and the '08 recession happened. Ooh. And there was a big hiring freeze. People got fired, and I was really just blessed to have a job. But I got stuck at this manufacturing plant. So I ended up business major, helping Mitch and Slaw Dog fix transmissions on the manufacturing line, and working the third shift, which is going to work from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. every single day, fresh out of college.
Wow.
I'm like, what the hell did I sign myself up for?
Where was that?
That was in Atlanta. So that brought me to Atlanta, which is good.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I hate this manufacturing thing. But I got the best manufacturing supply chain education. And on 13 months and 1 day, I quit, because that's how long I needed to stay before I had to give back my signing bonus. So I stayed there for that. And fast forward, that experience has helped me tremendously as I later on opened up an e-commerce brand. I had first class education on supply chain, first class education on essentially e-commerce, but at the time it was just physical commerce. So I'm fortunate for that experience in the rare, but at the time I didn't really enjoy having to go to work at 10 p.m. every night when all my friends were out enjoying Atlanta and the nightlife. So,
wow.
But it paid out really well.
That's so interesting. And so then you took that knowledge in 13 years, 1 month, and you launched your first company?
Not quite. So What happened was I got into financial services sales.
Okay.
I actually ended up working for Wells Fargo for a little bit, but on the financial product side. So life insurance, commercial liability insurance, things like that. And I ended up doing that really well. And I got to be a VP in my 20s. I was making 6 figures in my 20s, which a kid from Jamaica, very good. Right?
Yeah.
And so my parents were proud. I was proud, but I wasn't happy. And then entrepreneurial, wearing the nice suit, all that stuff. The expense report, expense accounts, traveling all over, feeling important. But that entrepreneurial bug was still itching me, right? And I wanted to get back into that. So I spent years trying to figure out what that thing was going to be, kind of part-time. And I sucked at it, really. And I just kept trying. I probably tried 3 or 4 things that just did not take off. Over the span of 2 years, I probably made $8,000 on my side income. And, you don't have to be good at math to know you don't walk away from a 6-figure job to go make $4,000 a year.
Right.
So I just kept going and meeting people until I finally found a mentor that introduced me to this whole world of digital marketing and online businesses, which I was a natural good fit for because of my psychology and human understanding background.
Wow. So the importance of mentorship. So who was the mentor that you found and helped you?
There's so many. I have had so many, and my superpower is being able to connect well with people. And for one reason or the other, they feel comfortable enough to share their life lessons to help me kind of speed up and avoid roadblocks and potential mistakes. So I've been fortunate. Any kind of relative success I've had so far has largely been off the strength that I've had people that are ahead of me that have been kind enough to show me the ropes.
Wow.
So this particular one was a friend that I knew from middle school. We actually started that candy business together. And he figured it out, and I met him, and he just kind of, hey, I don't know if you've seen this movie about Wall Street where the guy's at the diner. He's like, hey, how much money did you make last week? And the guy's like, $70,000. He's like, well, if you show me your paycheck, I'll quit my job today. It was kind of one of those scenarios.
I think that was Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street, yep.
I remember that.
Similar story. I was like, we grew up in how are you affording all this stuff? And he was like, yeah, this online thing. It sounded like kind of a Ponzi scheme, but I'm like, you know what? I don't know what I don't know. So I should not be ignorant to the fact that there's tremendous amount of opportunities out there that I just don't know yet. And I can't want what I don't know. So let me learn about this and have a more open approach to other things. And so he showed it to me. And I took off a week, came down. He was in South Florida, actually. And I learned this stuff from him. And at the time, it was early Facebook ads. And at that time, he spent over $1 million on Facebook ads. And I've never even heard of this thing. This is like in 2010, 2012, something like that. And I said, you know what? This is so strange, but I want to learn it. And within 90 days of working with him, I made $107,000, $107,000 in my first 90 days of that partnership.
Wow.
On the side.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, you call that your superpower, being able to connect with people. So it sounds like that's worked really well for you. And for like maybe some of the people watching this, any advice to them about how to use that same superpower and to connect?
Yeah. So the key with everything is like, back to that kind of background in psychology is reciprocity. We had an we were talking off mic and you were like, man, you're the only person that like had an interest in me essentially. And I always lead with that. People are so interesting. And so I think I just genuinely care about people and genuinely have an interest in figuring out who people are, what they do, the types of things that are interesting to them, and just like remove myself from my ego. And that has done well for me. That's a simple thing anyone can do.
That is great advice. What's that? Win Friends and Influence People, that classic book. I mean, how people they really want to talk about themselves and hear their own name. And you've mastered that. Obviously, it comes natural.
I'm not a master, but...
Well, it comes natural, I think.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And that's
it's genuine.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was saying that I've had like different guests on, and Gamal was the only one who said, well, tell me your story. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So you... on your entrepreneurial journey, so you learn about digital marketing, you're making, as much money in 90 days as you're making, doing your banking job. What's the next step?
So I found another mentor, and this mentor kind of exposed me to a whole entire different realm. And he was in private equity doing leverage buyouts. Mm. And so I met this guy at a networking event, and he was also Jamaican. And at the time, he was getting ready to exit a company to Dell for like $900 million. And he was African-American, he was Jamaican, he was African-American. And I've never met someone that plays at this space and is so relatable, right? And so the cool thing about mentorship also that I'd like to add is it really just does two things mostly. The first thing is you can't want what you don't know exists. And so it opens you up to new possibilities. Growing up in the inner city in Fort Lauderdale, my reality was kind of what we knew in our little couple of block radius, right? Like the people we went to church with, and that's what success looked like. And 6 figures a year was like a thing. And then I met someone who's about to sell something for almost $1 billion. I'm like, what reality is this? I thought you had to do all these things to be this person. So mentorship opens up new realms of reality.
You can't know. What was the quote? It was great.
Yeah. You can't want what you don't know.
You can't want what you don't know. That's a Gamal Codner.
Hey, that's a bar. One. You guys need to write that one down. I'll say it again. You can't want what you don't know. And so in the pursuit of life, you can do yourself a lot of justice by just opening up what you think you know and just meeting other people and just being exposed to new things. And so mentorship for me, and I'll bring it back to this mentor, it's two things. It's a motivation gap and an ability gap. And so ability was usually what people think of. Motivation and ability, but people don't usually think of them in both. So they're like, I need to learn how to do this thing, right? Like if I wanted to open up a bank, you obviously done it. Or if I wanted to learn about something that you've mastered, I would go to you for that. But the thing that's been really important for me is the motivation gap too, because the more I hang out with people, not to sound bad, but the more I realize that they're normal. And these people who are accomplishing extraordinary things just have persistence and access to information and a hard work ethic. And it demystifies this like magical thing, like, oh, the road to a $900 million exit isn't this superpower. It's really just practicing these things over and over and over again. And these things, as you hang around these mentors, you realize, oh, these are things I can pick up too. So the ability gap and the motivation gap are a really good reason for mentorship because it helps make things more tangible for you and realistic. And then the ability piece is you're going to make mistakes. Entrepreneurship is all about problem solving. And the thing is, other people have had these problems before. They're new to you, but Nothing's new under the sun. And so I met this guy, and he exposed me to the world of private equity. And I told him I wanted to learn about it because he essentially, for those of you listening who don't know what private equity is, they essentially buy and sell and flip businesses like people flip homes or even automobiles, right? So they acquire businesses, improve the valuation, and then sell them to someone else and make the difference. And when you're flipping homes, you can make tens of thousands, possibly even hundreds of thousands. When you're flipping businesses, you can make tens of millions, possibly hundreds of millions. And so it just opened up my reality to what business means. And I was like, how do I learn about this? And he gave me 2 books to read. The 2 books are Barbarians at the Gate and Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? You guys know about that book, huh?
I know about Barbarians at the Gate, which is like written when, back. But I don't know about Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?
By Reginald Lewis. And he was essentially one of the first African Americans to run a billion-dollar empire through leveraged buyouts. And it was like a biography and an autobiography mix because he passed before the book published. But it was just a real practical approach for his journey of how he went from law into a private equity kind of titan. And I read it, and I met this guy. The mentor's name is David. I met David again, and he quizzed me. And he like pulled my card out. He's like, what do you think about the book? What do you think about this? And I had like a pop quiz, but I actually read it. And he's like, you know what? The majority of the people I give this advice to, they never take up on it. And so what I just did was to see if I should actually invest in you. And I passed that test, and I pretty much shadowed him for the next 2 years. Just attending all the meetings I could, going to his house on the weekends, and just kind of being a fly on the wall to just learn more of that ability gap and motivation gap and kind of catch my speed up.
So you're hanging out with David, you're watching him operate, and then what opportunities became available to you?
And this is why I really wanted to be here and talk about the importance of banking in a relationship. So I pretty much helped David. He started a family office, which is private money that he deployed into investing companies. And I helped David and other people kind of deploy about $50 million in the whole time I worked with him. And so my main job was, because I was big on relationships, was to go source deals. So I'd meet business owners who needed an investor, or because of my role in like financial services, I was already speaking to a lot of small business CEOs, and it just played well to like lead deal flow. And I did that so well, I got crazy enough to think that I could buy a business too. And so I started an investment company and found a business that I could buy for about $15 million. And I got the deal under LOI. And I remember I called David. I'm like, man, I got some good news for you. Where can I meet? And we always met at this restaurant, this steakhouse. And I said, David, here's the LOI. It's $15 million. He's like, man, that's great. How much of this do you have already? And I was like, probably like 15 grand. And he did the same thing. He started laughing at me. He was like, man, you're wild, but I love it. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to help you get this done. And so I got all the commitments to fund the deal in about 40 days.
Wow.
I raised essentially, it was like $13 million because there was a little bit of seller note. No, so a little bit of equity and then mezz debt and senior debt. So
cool.
The relationships I had with a local bank essentially allowed me to get some leverage to get that deal.
And that was a bank in Atlanta?
It wasn't. It was, we ended up finding a bank through a relationship that was outside of Atlanta, but it still worked out pretty well. It was a Florida bank, actually.
Really? Which one?
So the mezz debt was Penta, and the senior was Academy Bank, and they're in Missouri.
Academy's in Missouri,
Yep.
but Penta was here.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, Grant Hill is one of the partners in that fund. They're based out of Orlando.
Cool. Yeah, we ought to meet them because obviously Penta's probably not a bank, right? Not a FDIC bank, but they're doing more like kind of investment bank deals.
Or M&A and like growth equity.
Yeah. Interesting. That's
but
great.
They follow on and they're like good for lead flow.
Yeah.
They get a lot of
deals. And then
deals.
they'll bring in the
banks,
the other debt,
for like line of credits or just like cash flow and that kind of stuff.
Cool.
So we had like a kind of a tiered structure, but that story also ended up bad. So I did all that, and the company we were acquiring was in the oil and gas sector.
Okay,
they provided services to major oil and gas companies in the Midwest, and we spent like months negotiating. This is like my first time doing it. I'm always that guy jumping out of the plane and figuring out the parachute on the way down. I've never done this before. And so it took me a little bit to figure stuff out. but I'm resourceful, so I figured it out. But long story short, we got all the docs, did all the due diligence, and I was supposed to submit final approval stuff to the bank academy on Thursday, and I just kind of got ahead of myself. I figured it was already done, and long story short, I didn't. I sent it on Friday, and that bank was closed on Friday, so that rolled the decision into Monday. And over the weekend, oil tanked. It went from like over $100 a barrel to $30 a barrel. I don't know if you remember when that happened.
Yeah.
But on Monday, the bank president woke up and said that they don't want anything to do with any oil and gas blending. So they withdrew from the deal.
Wow.
A done deal. They withdrew from it. So I was pretty much stuck with about $240K in transaction debt from like legal, accountant, all these things that I got stuck with. So that's how that story ended.
Wow. So that's an expensive lesson.
A very expensive lesson. And bringing this back to mentorship, I went to David and I explained what happened. And he was like, you know what? These are all problem solving, right? They've all had these mistakes before. He said, you know what? Let me tell you about a story when I was stuck with $1 million in deal fees and how I got through that, and see if you can borrow some things from it. And I eventually got out of that. So I turned back to digital marketing, which is always like my bread and butter.
Yes.
And just kind of got myself out of the hole and repaid my debts, and just like really just realized that at that point I needed to focus on what was working for me and stop running away from it. And I focused on just online marketing more and just growing an online presence and building brands online.
And then what businesses, I know you've had and started and exited some successful businesses. Tell us about those.
Yeah. So the most recent one, I actually, when I left corporate America, so I started making all that money online.
Yep.
And I prayed to God and was like, hey, God, this is going well, but this is uncharted territory. Like, I'm in a really good position, this big job, safe job. This is unpredictable. Give me a sign. In that day, in that 30 days, in that month, I got let go from my job that I was doing well at. So it's kind of entrepreneurship. And in banking, you can't have any facial hair, right? You're like, clean. Yeah. You can, but it's uncommon. And so I started growing my beard the day I left. I was like, I have had facial hair the day I've left entrepreneurship. This is like my thing about me being an entrepreneur. And so, but my beard sucked. And there was not a lot of products on the market for like men of color with beards. Our hair is like interesting. So I have this like Evernote of like 7-figure ideas. And I traveled to North Africa and found this like miracle oil that they've been using for like hundreds of years. And it worked like better than anything I've ever seen. And my family and I started this e-commerce brand, essentially making grooming products for African-American men. And because of my background in paid ads and establishing an online presence, we went from $0 to $60,000 a month in our first 90 days.
Wow.
Yep. And then we eventually went on to generate, multiple millions. And then we got acquired in year 4. So we got acquired last year.
Oh, congratulations. That's great.
Thank you.
A great story.
Thank you.
And you're still a young guy.
Yeah, not bad, right? So now we're on to the new thing. So I'm taking the Elon Musk route and just rolling stuff into the new thing. So that was my version of PayPal, and let's see if I could come up with the next Tesla or SpaceX.
That's great. Yeah, so tell us, so as you're looking at the future, what ideas do you have right now that you're working on?
Yeah, one of those other things that I wrote down was just recognizing the need for access to capital in growing entrepreneurs and their businesses. A lot of entrepreneurs self-fund, and that limits them for a ton of reasons. It's kind of obvious reasons. But becoming bankable or investable or exitable is a difficult thing that there's not a lot of awareness around. So I'm an official, like Shopify is one of the largest e-commerce platforms. I'm one of few official Shopify mentors, and I've largely taught marketing because that's what most business owners have, the gap of like marketing. But I realized once you get to a certain point of like an e-com, maybe $50,000 to $100,000 per month, you start needing to have operations and systems and removing yourself from all the decisions and like professionalize your business. And a large piece of that comes with access to capital and finance. And so there's these scenarios where I met with founders all the time where they would be doing $100,000, but didn't have anything to show for it per month and didn't have anything to show for it, or they paid themselves a nice salary, but because they did that, their margins were low. They couldn't really fund inventory or bring on smart people. So they were like the smartest person in their company, which bottlenecked them. And so now what my wife and I, we've started a brand, a consultant company that specifically works with online brands, helping them to not only like kind of the two phases. The first phase is marketing, but the second space in where we get a lot of traction lately are brands who already established $50,000 to $100,000 per month, but they're burnt out, they're overwhelmed, and they're self-funding a lot of their growth, so it's prohibiting them. So we help them systemize themselves and get ready for investors or banks. And then a large portion of those people eventually become exitable, where since this year, we've advised about three founders and helped them get ready to be acquired. They've had offers to be acquired and totaling north of $20 million in total like exit value. We've been advising them and helping them put all the pieces together to maximize their exit. So that's what we're doing now.
That's so cool. What's the name of that company?
Codner Inc. is the brand. Codner.co is our website. And that program is Exit Blueprint.
Wow.
So remove yourself from the business and learn how to become exitable.
Some good advice and good resource for anybody who's in that phase of where they're trying to get to that next level and looking for access to capital. So that's a great idea. Anything else that's on your mind now that you're back in South Florida now? You've moved back here, you said, and how is that going? Are you happy to be back?
I am. The weather is, you cannot beat South Florida weather unless it's in like the hot, unless it's summer.
Yeah.
But access to the beach, I mean, you could be on vacation every weekend with a good staycation. So fortunate with that. I was being transparent though. In Atlanta, I had an amazing community of like-minded founders and entrepreneurs. So part of the other thing, this is a virtual program that we've created. Part of the other bad part about entrepreneurship is, and kind of why we started this for ourselves, is it can get lonely. Mm-hmm. You're so dialed in, problems come up, and you feel like your friends and families don't understand the intensity of the decisions that you're going through. And so part of the reason for starting this community is we have a dope community of online founders of 6-7 figure brands, so we can pour into each other. But I would like to see more of that locally, and I haven't found that yet. So I'm being more proactive about going out, meeting people, networking, and trying to establish a presence down here in Fort Lauderdale too. Maybe
we can do something right here at General Provision.
That'd be great.
Together. I mean, Locality Bank is all about helping businesses, local companies get access to capital too. So sounds like we might be onto something here.
Let's do it.
So anything else that you want to share that I haven't hit on yet or asked you about? Because it might be helpful to entrepreneurs who are listening or potential entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think the last piece, I will give some advice about what I just mentioned. So if you are the founder where you have success, but you're overwhelmed, you've essentially built this golden prison, as I like to call it, right? You built this business that you dreamed of, but now it's trapping you from being able to be with your family, to go on vacation, to participate in parties. There is hope. And so some practical things. Most cases, the entrepreneur is the visionary, where they're the idea person, oftentimes too many ideas, right? But they're the idea, they're the relationship person. And what they're missing is an integrator. This is the person who's actually going to keep you focused and execute on these things. And oftentimes, I think if you're in this space, a very simple solution could be to remove yourself from some of that overwhelm, is to find an integrator. It oftentimes looks like a project manager or an operations person. And that's what we focus on, helping businesses put systems in place and to find that person. But you really don't have to bring on someone full time. Oftentimes, what you can do is get on LinkedIn and find someone who's working for a larger company who has the Fortune 500 training to do these things, and just reach out and say, hey, would you mind consulting with me to help me get this stuff in place for a couple hours a week or a couple hours a month? Especially with the upcoming, whatever, the slowdown, inflation, stagflation, recession, whatever you want to call it, a lot of people are more open to secondary income now. So you can find some help from a professional that's not going to break your bank, that will help relieve you with some of that ability gap and skill set, or motivation and ability gap, right? You could learn some of that stuff from a professional who's had corporate training. So that would be the one thing I can say, free advice for someone out there who feels like that, who maybe is not a good fit for my program or doesn't know how to get help, find someone in your local area on LinkedIn that has been doing it day in and day out in their 9 to 5.
That is, go ahead.
And the last part is the key is don't hire a consultant. So if someone is like, hey, we consult like this, like myself, right? I'm going to be more expensive because I have frameworks in place, proven success and stuff like that. And I am, there's more guaranteed predictability. But if you don't have the cash flow yet to afford someone who has done it time and time again, just reach out to someone who's a professional and may not know what's fair market, or may just be looking to, because they have a full-time income, may just be looking to provide some supplemental income. So you're probably going to get a much better deal for the information. You're just going to have to do more hand-holding, where if you work with a professional consultant, a lot of that stuff is already systemized and framework for you. So you have options.
That's a unique idea that I don't think I've ever heard before. And I think it's a great idea because, I do a lot of reach out on LinkedIn. If I hired a lot of people on LinkedIn, in fact, one of my co-founders, I met him, on LinkedIn. He moved here from Louisiana, really, to help start the bank. So, but I think that's powerful. And I think there are people out there, I mentioned I started as an entrepreneur when in my 50s, so there are bankers, there's other professionals out there who have a little entrepreneurial in them, and they may respond very well to. I think that's a brilliant suggestion. So, I could go on and on. I can't wait to watch this because I'm going to take notes from all the stuff you said. Gamal.
You're too kind.
You've got a lot of good stuff. Anything else? You've shared a lot with us.
Just a personal plug. If you found anything I've said valuable and you like to stay connected, I put a lot of information out on social media, and I've recently launched a YouTube channel myself where I'll be just trying to add as much value into the world as possible. So you can follow me at Gamal Codner on Instagram and codner.co online to stay connected, and we'll connect there.
And we'll post all that on the show notes too. So you can definitely, I'm definitely following you on all those things. So last, we just do a kind of a quick hit you with some stuff, and you can pass if you want, but just quick responses. A quote.
You can't want what you don't know. That's been a big one for me.
That's an original too, right? Is that original?
I don't know where. I kind of heard bits and pieces
We're going to go
it.
with that. We're going to say you created that right here on this podcast.
Yeah, you can't want what you don't know.
Happiest moment?
Holding my daughter for the first time.
That's great. How old is she?
She's a 1.5 now.
Wow.
We had her when we moved back to Fort Lauderdale.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm just getting ready to take my youngest daughter to her next job in California. Lowest moment?
I would say sitting in that moment of being $240K in debt and not having a plan to get out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was, as I'm listening to you say that had to be such a great lesson too. Even though it was horrible, you learned so much from those things to get out of it.
Yeah. The other quote is, things happen for you, not to you. So in that moment, in every moment, it's always like, what's the silver lining in this? What is God trying to show me in this, right? Or whoever you believe in, I believe in God. So what's the higher being for me, it's God. What are they trying to tell me? What lesson can I learn in this? And how is it going to make me stronger later on in life?
It's great.
And that lesson helped me prepare myself for my exit with this brand. So I learned a lot from that. It's very valuable.
Most important quality for anybody who is an entrepreneur or doing a startup?
Great question. I would say the two most important qualities are willingness to learn and having real honest, where you're honest about your strengths and weaknesses. Can't think of the word for that, but
self-awareness.
Having great self-awareness. Mm-hmm.
Good. Must read books or book?
How to Win Friends and Influence People. And for online entrepreneurs, there's so much. For online entrepreneurs, a big distraction, or entrepreneurs in general, a big distraction is lack of habit and routine. So I really love Atomic Habits.
Okay.
It helps me kind of dial in and stay focused on what I need to focus on.
Good. What do you do to relax? What hobbies do you have?
I like fast cars. And so when I can, I like to either watch them or get in them when possible. And the other thing, I like to play sports and just hang out with friends.
Cool. Did you go to F1 when it was here?
I missed it. We had like a scheduling conflict, so I
got
didn't
to
get
go
it.
to Austin to see it last. Yeah, it was
Man,
awesome.
it was nice, right?
Yeah, it was amazing. Favorite restaurant?
North Italia down here.
What's the name of it?
North Italia. It's
And where's it
Italian.
located?
It's in Brickell.
Oh, wow. I don't know it. So I'm gonna
What's
have
your
to check
favorite
it out.
restaurant in Fort Lauderdale? I got to check something out.
So actually, I'm going to go with what Andrew Sasson, who was the previous guest, said, which is Cafe Vico. You can't go wrong there. Local restaurant. And I'll give you one other one, which is the Anthony's Clam House, which is, have you guys been there? I mean, that's amazing too. And, you walk in, the owner, it's that kind of place. So, so we also try to, I say we, me personally, also our bank, we really try to support local companies as much as we can. So I love not that I don't go to a chain restaurant once in a while, but whenever I can, I like to go to the local ones. But anyway, I'm talking too much now. This is your interview. Thank you so much, Gamal Codner, for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, and I enjoyed myself today, so I appreciate the interview.
Great. Thank you. So Gamal Codner, really interesting story. A lot of great advice. Young guy and just has so much knowledge to share. Very impressed with Gamal. One thing, he's the first guest that I've had on who actually asked me any questions about myself, which was one of his superpowers, which is reciprocity and the ability to get people to talk about themselves. He said that's a natural for him. And removing your ego and how he's learned from that classic lesson of how to win friends and influence people, get people to talk about themselves. He also did a side hustle while he was working a corporate job. And while he was doing that side hustle, ended up making more money in 90 days than he was making in his current job. So that's a good way to make sure that what you're doing in your next gig is going to be a soft landing rather than a hard landing for you. Another great quote that is an original Gamal quote: "You can't want what you don't know." So he talked about how he grew up and how many things he didn't know about. He didn't know you could do a $900 million exit. So learning about these things, and then he wanted them. So you have to expose yourself to the world and find out what the possibilities are to be able to go after them. He talked about the importance of persistence and having access to information. And then he also talked about the difference between the motivation gap and the ability gap. So there's two things. You have to be motivated and you have to have the ability to do it. And there are gaps in both. So you can learn everything about how to do something. But then there's also, are you hanging around with the people who are going and doing incredible things? And are they motivated? And are they going for that next challenge? So again, great advice from Gamal Codner. Really happy to have had him on as a guest. And you can check us out at localitybank.com. We also have a Locality Bank app. You can open an account in 3 to 5 minutes. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in for Locality's Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.